One thing I see people bringing up a lot when they're challenging my belief in Jesus is that the Gospels are written anonymously. Now, I actually agree with this. This is just simply the conclusion that's been made in scholarship, that the Gospels are anonymous because internally, the Gospel writers do not state their own names. So that means that Matthew never said, I, Matthew, wrote this Gospel. But there are indicators and history to show that we can be confident in who these authors are: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The main point to be able to understand this is that the Gospels are unanimously agreed upon as sourcing from the apostle community. The apostles, the eyewitnesses of Christ, wrote accounts of their witness of the resurrected Christ according to the unanimous consensus of the leaders of the early church in the first couple of centuries. We also have unanimous consensus in manuscripts. When manuscripts show up with a title, it's always given to their given authors, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, on those documents. Now, on top of that, we also have internal evidence, different rings of truth and showings that these authors were known from the start. For example, in Luke chapter 1, he writes to a man named Theophilus. Theophilus would have known who was writing to him. On top of that, Luke's gospel includes more accounts of physical healings of Christ. Luke was a physician, so he would have been more interested in this type of healing. And then in Matthew, he was a tax collector, and he more specifically lays out coinage in his gospel. Now, on top of all this, we also have the fact that Mark and Luke are evidence that the authors are authentic just from the titles being Mark and Luke. Mark and Luke were not eyewitnesses themselves. Rather, they were the scribes of eyewitnesses. They wrote down what they learned from the eyewitness community. It's unlikely, if these names were made up, that they would have attributed the authorship to people who were not more well known, such as Thomas. Stay blessed, y'all. God really loves us. You can trust that the biographies Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and the New Testament as a whole is portraying accurate information about what the disciples believed and who Jesus was. Jesus is God in human flesh. This is what the disciples conclude. They worship him as God, and they saw him resurrected from the grave. If he did rise from the grave, if he is God in flesh, that means we've got a God that is willing to forgive us for the mistakes we make, that is unconditionally loving and just wants us to turn from evil and to start loving God and to love each other. Stay blessed, y'all. God really loves us.